Welcome, everybody.
Jason, can I use your pen?
Yes. Oops, I have a brand new pen plate. Good evening and welcome to the February 8th, 2023 Planning and Development Subcommittee meeting of the Gloucester City Council. I'm Jason Groh, the chair of the committee. I'm joined here by Councillor O'Neill, Tracy O'Neill, and President of the Council, Val Gilman. Sherry White will be taking our notes and keeping us in line. We have all sorts of lovely people in the audience. We have a number of things to get onto, but I'm going to say that if you're calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or a device, there's a raised hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options to be recognized to speak, and we will call on you when appropriate. We've already introduced everybody in who's on the attendees list. Anybody? Any councilors? No, we got Rick Noonan, chairman of the planning board, on the attendees list, listening in, making sure we're going to do things right tonight. And that is it. We have two matters that will be continued tonight that we're not discussing. One is a communication from Legal Seafood, excuse me, Seaside Legal Solutions. We should just change his name. It'll make things a lot easier. On behalf of DLM Properties LLC, owner of 24 Connolly Road, requesting a referral to planning board pursuant to GZO section 1.11.3 for an informal review of proposed amendment to add a transfer station to the use in the GZO table. And the other condition, the other issue that will be continued tonight, we thought we were going to have it tonight, but we're going to put it off 2 weeks. Is City Council Order 2022-24, Gilman and Groh request the planning board and the planning and I'm going to learn to read tonight. Requested the Planning and Development Standing Committee and the Planning Board review the compliance guidelines for multifamily zoning districts under Section 3A of the Zoning Act issued on August 10th, 2022. And that's going to be continued until February 22nd, and the Seaside Legal Solutions will also be continued to February 22nd. And then we will take those up. So the first thing we have on the agenda tonight is communication from Essex County Greenbelt requesting a conservation restriction for the Essex County Greenbelt Association for 16 North Kilby Street. And we have Maggie Brown with Greenbelt to run us through this, and we'll let you rip and then we'll ask questions.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. Now that I see you all there in the room, I really wish I was there with you, but thank you for offering the hybrid format. Since I am on the computer, would you like me to share my screen, share the maps? Do you have that information in front of you?
Yeah, the first thing we need to do is introduce yourself and go from there. Sorry for the record.
Of course, yeah. Maggie Brown, Land Conservation Project Manager at Essex County Greenbelt. I'm here to talk about the 16 North Kilby Street conservation restriction.
Great. So you do whatever you feel you need to do. If you want to share screens or if you just want to tell us about it, whatever works for you.
Well, if it's easy to enable screen sharing, I can pull up the map really quick.
Should be good to go.
Okay, excellent. Okay, great. Essex County Greenbelt has been working with the owner of 16 North Kilby Street, who would like to donate a conservation restriction on the majority of their property to Greenbelt. The conservation restriction will permanently protect 23 approximate acres and permanently protect the natural resource values of that land, including prime forest soils and a potential vernal pool, and also connect a puzzle of more than 100 acres of existing conservation land. So it's really stellar from a conservation perspective. The CR has been supported by the Gloucester Conservation Commission and reviewed and approved by the State Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. So at this point, we are seeking approval of the conservation restriction as something that is in the public interest from the City Council and from the Mayor. The CR will be permanently stewarded and monitored by Greenbelt, but remain in private ownership. So without taking up too much of your time, that's a brief summary, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Very good. Do you have any questions?
I do.
Start with Council Gilman.
So thank you. So I live close to this particular area, and I just have a couple of questions. First of all, on Quarry Road, where you've talked about a gate, is that the gate right now that's right after the water station? Is that the gate that will take us into the path that goes by Vernon's and Nelson's and then out through South Kilby and North Kilby?
Thank you for that question. I'm not quite sure. There's no public access as part of this conservation restriction, so I'm not sure if that Quarry Road is one that connects to other trails. But yeah, thank you for that question. I'll definitely look into it.
Okay, so there's no, so you're not extending the trails for the whole network because in the documents, it said that it was going to be linking to the Plum Cove area. And there are a lot of back trails, hiking trails in all those areas. So I was just curious if that was going to be part of this conservation.
Right, I appreciate that. Yeah, it fills in a puzzle ecologically and from a habitat perspective, but whether or not trails are open to the public remains up to the landowner.
Okay, so then follow-up
Yeah,
question,
please.
Counselor?
Yeah.
So the maintenance that Essex County Greenbelt will take care of at this point is really to just protect the lands, the 23 acres that are being protected, not to oversee a trail network. At least
That's right.
Your perspective. Okay.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah, Greenbelt's role is to monitor the terms of the conservation restriction and make sure that they're abided by for all future landowners. But we have not a trail maintenance or reservation opening role in this conservation restriction.
Okay. And I just have one selfish thing to add as a city official. So as this all occurs and you're doing the clearing and the maintenance, thank you so much. The fire gate onto Quarry Road is the only access that emergency vehicles can get in when something happens at the quarries. So if that's something that you can clear and make 9 feet wide, so if we have an emergency in the quarries, we can get in that way off Quarry Road. It's such a big improvement from having to go the other way, which is a really gnarly, very tight trail. So maybe that's something that you can work with the city as you partner with us and that landowner to see how we can make this mutually beneficial. So just my thought. But anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for throwing that out. I'll mention that with the landowner.
Thank you.
Tracy, do you have any questions?
Yes, so Val asked the question, and there will be no public access whatsoever?
Not this time. It remains in private ownership. So like any other private property, that's up to the landowner.
Okay. So the landowner is gifting it to Greenbelt, correct?
Correct.
Okay, with the landowner gets a real estate tax deduction, correct?
That depends on the situation. And it's not Greenbelt's role to know.
All right, so the building envelope, right, that they're keeping
Mhm.
behind the house, can they sell that building envelope to anyone they want to? Because they own it,
Oh,
so they can.
sorry, go ahead.
The building envelope that goes behind the house,
Yep.
they can sell that. It's like 1.2 acres. The owner can sell that to whomever he wants to, correct?
No, the entire, everything in red stays as one contiguous parcel.
Okay,
Uh,
so,
The
So I
building,
don't-
so it will be
Go ahead.
under one ownership. The building envelope is for just to assign an area where they can have a barn, a shed, and a cottage.
Okay. Do you know what the redevelopment value of the property is? Do we know what that is?
I do not.
Okay. Then you wouldn't know the charitable consideration, right?
No, I don't.
So I'm not against conservation by any stretch of the imagination, but this piece of land is a lot of, it doesn't look like it's very buildable anyway. Is that correct? Can we do a site visit? Is that possible?
For what purpose?
To see what this land looks like, because if there's no road,
With the conservation restriction, they wouldn't be able to build on it, period. So it would remain as it is in perpetuity,
okay,
as long as the conservation restriction was in place.
right. So what I see is 23 odd acres, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what amount of, how much real estate taxes is the city of Gloucester going to lose by giving it away? So I don't know what they pay, so I don't know what we'll lose. And I don't know,
I
mean, I
could
think
actually
that's
answer that.
important.
I looked it up today.
Okay.
The land is valued at about,
a million something
it's about $1 million something.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the
tax.
open space rate and the amount that it would go, but
Right.
it would be reduced by a little bit on that front of it. I mean, it's
Most,
at $1 million, you're talking about 1,000 times 12, so 12,000 a year, it would be a reduction on that. So it would be a, I don't know what the open space rate is right now. I should know that, shouldn't I?
So we get about $12,000 a year in taxes off of that.
Currently,
Okay.
off the land.
So we could potentially actually lose that. Most of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. I think that's,
okay. So that's it for you.
I think so. Thank you.
Okay, sure. The other questions I have, obviously, I would love to see public access on this. The current restricted land next to it that's outlined in green, is that publicly accessible now?
no, that's not either. That's also under private ownership with a Greenbelt CR. So it is, preserving the natural resource values of that property. I don't have the acreage on that one. It's also pretty
That's
large.
okay, doesn't matter. I thought, I was wondering if it was a public access. So the building envelope is really only is reserving a special place in case they want to add additional usage of their residential area on the left side there. You're talking about a possible barn, cottage. You wouldn't necessarily put in a new house or there would be no subdivision possibilities there whatsoever, correct?
Correct. They have an existing barn and cottage. They're talking about building out the barn a little bit farther for some additional storage. And they can't build out that whole building envelope, that whole block in blue.
Right.
That can't all be built out because there's restrictions on how much they can build out those existing structures. But the area just identifies that area for Greenbelt's monitoring purposes.
And for anybody who's interested, who's watching this at home, all of the allowed uses and prohibitions are in the packet that we have, so you can look through those. Any other questions? Any discussion? We don't need to, this isn't going for a public hearing, is it? We're just doing it for a vote and then goes to the city council for vote.
Just Council Grow, Kinley Gregg's hand is up. and that's
Kinley
who-
Gregg is the owner of the
Yes.
property, so we'd be happy to have her speak. Ms. Gregg?
But if she could stop sharing.
Oh, we need you to stop sharing the screen for a second. Ms. Brown?
Oh, sure, of course.
Ms. Gregg?
Can you hear me
We
now?
can.
Thank you.
Commiserate me. I understand you're a select woman in York, Maine.
Yes, I am, but that is not the role I am here tonight in.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Thank you.
Okay.
I wanted to go back and clarify Councilor Gilman's questions about Quarry Road. And the Quarry Road that is referenced in the conservation restriction is not the public way that vehicles travel. And it's an obsolete and overgrown former, basically ox road for carrying granite. It's a historic feature. It is platted out on Exhibit C, which is the last page of your packet. So I just want to clarify that those are two different quarry roads we're dealing with. Thank you.
Okay. That's helpful. That was what confused me, so thank you.
Thank you, Kinley.
All right. Anything else? We got anybody else to weigh in here? No, we're all good. I see Greg Catamatore on the call. Do you have anything to say? You can nod your picture up and down if you do not. Okay. With that in mind, then we'll,
Oh, he's there.
oh, he's here. Hi, Greg.
I mean, nothing really to add. I would also point out, just on the point of taxation, that tax has also been based on the potential of the land as well. So one could argue that somebody's been paying on the potential of their land for a number of years. I mean, at this point, there is a reduction because of them kind of relinquishing those potential development rights. I can tell you that I've seen different scenarios on this property over the years of potentially bringing a subdivision road to the property. Aside from the fact that, there are conservation values on the property that have been identified in the application or the petition, there also is a certain amount of development potential there as well.
So no casino.
Don't think that's allowed by our ordinance.
All right, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I move to recommend that the city council approve a conservation restriction from Kinley Greggs to the Essex County Greenbelt Association, Inc. for property of 23 plus or minus acres at 16 North Kilby Street, map 157, lot 15, for the purpose of the preservation of a natural resource of the city and being in the public interest pursuant to MGL Chapter 184, Section 32, and I so move.
Second,
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Go ahead.
I
Counselor.
just don't see what the value is in giving up the developmental rights and giving up the tax base, the tax revenue that this land will bring. So, with things are tight, and I'm just not convinced that it's a good thing.
Okay. Councilor Gilman, you have any comments?
No, I'm going to support this.
Okay, I would suggest that the benefit, I mean, I looked at the same thing you did, and I questioned whether or not how much tax dollars we would lose in terms of the overall amount, but what we're looking at here is preservation of land that's essentially not necessarily virgin land, because I don't know what's been there before over the years, but it is preserving a resource in the city that once gone is gone. So, there's no guarantee that 23 acres will ever be developed by anybody. I mean, based on the land, you see the vernal ponds and the
The
ponds that are
reservoir,
there.
right?
The reservoirs, I don't know how deep those are, or how seasonal they are, but the potential for development, I think, if it hasn't been at least approached in a serious manner at this point, is probably pretty minimal.
Right.
And I mean, the only thing I would like to see is I would like to see it be open to hiking and access.
But there's no public access.
No, I understand that. And maybe at some point in the future, public access will be granted,
Maybe
but-
not.
or maybe not. But, I mean, it's the same as we're not going to grant public access to your backyard either, are you? I mean, that's the kind of thing that,
Well, but this is conservation land, so.
so it's being conserved. So, anyway. Anything else on the motion?
No,
All right.
thank you.
We don't have to do roll call votes anymore, but we can if you want. We'll just do all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No, it's 2-1. O'Neill in opposition. It'll be moved to the city council and will be seen at the 14th.
Yes.
The next meeting. So the next meeting will be the 14th for a full city council vote. Very good. Thank you very much. And thanks for being here. Thank you, Ms. Gilly, for being here as well.
Thank you all for your time. Have a good night.
Great, sorry, I apologize there. All right, next thing, we have, we'll just skip to St. Peter's Fiesta. Joe,
Joking.
come on
All in
forward.
favor?
How are ya?
We'd never.
We'd never miss that.
skipped it, yes.
This is my
We're
favorite
so
event.
happy you're here.
Hi, I'm Joe Novello. I'm here with Anthony Cusmano and Dave Levy, committee members. We've submitted a request letter like we do every year, requesting the use of St. Peter's Park and the surrounding areas, which involve a small portion of Roger Street, right in front of the new restaurant, Oak and Ember, down Commercial Street to the, old Chamber of Commerce building. Now, when we submitted our letter, Councilor O'Neill brought it to my attention that our letter still stated that we would not have any vendors on the right side of the street, in consideration of the neighbors there. And it said that that area would extend from Charlie's to the Chamber of Commerce. Well, Chamber of Commerce is not there, so we should say from Charlie's to 33 Commercial Street.
Callies isn't there either.
So, I mean,
Yeah, we should, in future, we should put addresses.
yes.
That'd be good, yeah. That's fine.
It's actually in the motion. We've got 33 Commercial Street.
Do we? Okay, good. We're set on that. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty much the same stuff we've dealt with every year. There was some questions raised by the owner of the Oak and Ember. Did you want to address those questions?
There were questions from Oak and Ember?
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think Joe went down and talked to him. You settled
We
that.
spoke with them
Yep.
and they contacted our amusement company they've been talking, I guess, relationship is really good.
Yep.
We talked with them and I think everything's gonna work out well.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's, I wanted to make sure that there's
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah.
They're brand new and all that. Very good. Well, there's no more, you have any questions, Tracy?
Nope, not at all.
Val, you're happy?
No,
I just want you to know,
it's
Joe,
so
that
nice to be back here with you and in real time and
Pleasure, same.
this is, it's been a battle and you all kept the whole process going through the years in many
That's right.
ways, so thank you.
and despite the fact that we have a law against it now, my daughter's fish, Viva, is this long. Yeah, it's 7 years old now. I'm gonna have to think about putting it through college. I'm not really happy about it. How about a mo, you want to do the motion? You want me to do the motion?
I can do it if you want.
All
me
right,
to.
yeah, you got it, the motion.
I move to recommend the city council allow the 2023 annual St. Peter's Fiesta commencing on Wednesday evening, June 21st, 2023 through Sunday, June 25th, 2023 for the purpose of conducting the St. Peter's Fiesta on the days and dates mentioned herein and allowing the St. Peter's Fiesta Committee from June 21st through June 25th, 2023 to have the use and control of St. Peter's Park on Rogers Street, the streets and sidewalks of Rogers Street, from Mansfield Way to the entrance of Commercial Street, including the dock and deck area behind 11 Rogers Street, Commercial Street up to Fort Square, and from the intersection of Main and Washington Streets to St. Peter's Park, and on Friday, June 23rd, Saturday, June 24th, and Sunday, June 25th, on only the water side of Stacy Boulevard from 30 Western Avenue, the Tavern, to the Fisherman's Memorial in the Shimataro Gemilaro Playground at Fort Square for the purpose of conducting the St. Peter's Fiesta on the days and dates mentioned above with the following conditions. Number one, that the St. Peter's Fiesta Committee by June 5th, 2023 file a certificate of insurance naming the city of Gloucester as the certificate holder with the city clerk. Number two, that the kiddie rides, those restricted to children of a height of 42 inches or under, be kept at the St. Peter's Square Park. Three, that the footprint of the Fiesta be drawn on a plan showing locations of, but not limited to, comfort stations and first aid stations to be placed on file with the city clerk by June 5th, 2023. Four, that the music and rides closest to the altar area be shut down at the opening and closing ceremonies. Five, vendors shall not be allowed on the right-hand side of Commercial Street, nor on the streets and sidewalks from 2 Washington Street to 33 Commercial Street. Vendor trailers must be parked elsewhere as directed by the Gloucester Police Department with arrangements for such parking made in advance of the start of St. Peter's Fiesta. 6, one fixed vendor permitted by the city of Gloucester located on Stacy Boulevard is allowed to stay in place and vend during the fiesta. 7, Vendors on Stacy Boulevard must stay in the sidewalk and use weights for their tents. Stakes are prohibited. 8, handicap parking spaces must be kept clear at all times. 9, parking spaces can be used by vendors near the public landing on Stacy Boulevard, but can't locate in the middle of the landing or block users of the landing in any way. 10, all peddlers, canvassers, and solicitors and others who encroach upon or occupy in any way these areas without the express consent of the St. Peter's Fiesta Committee are to be considered trespassers and to be in violation of Gloucester Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, Section 14-6, trespass, and I so move.
Second,
All right, so moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? No, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye. All opposed? Nope. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, Anthony, and Jay.
Thank you guys for coming down.
Thank you.
Councilor Grow, Councilor Jeff Bartley is on the call as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
for being
guys.
here.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Joe. Good to see you.
Um,
Good to see you
Good
again.
to see you.
Thank you. All right, next thing we got here is the planning board initiation in accordance with GZO section 1.11.2A of proposed zoning amendments by deleting GZO section 5.5 lowlands and replacing with the new section 5.5 floodplain overlay district and amending sections 1.5, 1.8, 5.8, 5.9, and 5.15 to introduce potential flooding impacts as a permit review criteria. Now, we had the main presentation on this at the last meeting with Greg Cadamatore. We've spent some, we've offered 2 weeks for people to initiate questions, which have been submitted to Greg to be answered. I don't think we got a whole lot of questions. We got a few questions from a few people, but so Greg's going to address questions that were asked at that meeting and ask any clarifying questions that we might have. And we will move through this as expeditiously as possible. Mr. Cadamatore, happy birthday.
That was yesterday.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks.
But I
Greg
wanted to-
Cadamatore, Planning Director. So I was forwarded a few emails with some questions. They do kind of center in one particular area of the ordinance that it also will offer a little bit of a revision that I think is responsive to a number of questions that were also raised at the planning board level as well. So I have a brief presentation. Last time, I'm not sure what the slide count was, and I did not know I was going to be speaking for more than an hour. I only have about 6 slides, and hopefully it can take care of that in about 5 minutes or so. So I'm just going to share my screen. If everybody can see that okay.
Yep.
Okay, there we go. So here we are on the 8th as the follow-up to the presentation from last month. Again, just for familiarity for folks, they can either go to the city website right on the main page and hit the tab area maps and be taken to the Map Geo app where they can toggle the floodplain maps on. But I always will include the FEMA Map Service Center and its web address because that's really the official place. And there are some, from time to time, map amendments that don't get updated in the digital version. So if anybody is curious about what the floodplain representation is on their property, I definitely encourage them to go to the FEMA Map Service Center. And that's the web address at the bottom of the slide. Again, this is what it looks like on our city website. This would be the jurisdiction that's proposed in the floodplain overlay district. So anything that's in a tone of light blue would be governed by that ordinance. And if you zoom in, obviously you can see the different types of zones, which are also referenced in the proposed zoning ordinance. And we do go a little bit further as well, in that there was also a area that's been set up to be a part of the floodplain overlay district that is a mapped future scenario of potential flooding. And if any properties in that particular area that are beyond the floodplain, but only in this area of potential future flooding, it's really advisory. It's just to have folks think about as they're proposing uses on property, or the development of land to really think about that this may be something that if things go as predicted and there is accelerated sea level rise, they may be inundated in the maybe not so distant future. So the questions that I received, I kind of summarized them in a table, and I'll just review them. There was one question about does lot coverage mean footprint cannot exceed 10% of the lot? There is language that's very specific that when we're talking about lot coverage in the standards that deal with residential use, we're only talking about the percentage of the floodplain area on the lot. So there are standards for lot coverage in the zoning ordinance for every residential district. This is a new standard that would be put in place, but it's only a percentage of the floodplain that encumbers that portion of a particular lot. Future conditions, is it possible that AE zones may become VE zones? FEMA does periodic map updating. The boundaries of the floodplain at times extends further landward, and the boundary between a VE zone and an AE zone can be altered. There's nothing, what we're proposing or what's proposed in this ordinance changes that process. But yes, it is possible that these zones can be adjusted in the future, and that's performed by FEMA itself or its contractors. Will these zoning amendments affect flood insurance rates? They do not. We're not suggesting that there are areas that are going to now be encompassed by the FEMA floodplain that aren't mapped currently. Again, that's FEMA's responsibility, and insurance companies use those maps and the elevation of the property to determine the rates. So there's nothing in this ordinance. Again, this is an ordinance that's required by FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program to be adopted to be a participant, and for the several hundreds of policy holders to continue to be eligible for flood insurance in the community. So this ordinance does not affect that. And finally, how will this affect? There was one specific question about potential redevelopment of city-owned property. Again, the floodplain is the floodplain. The construction standards are the construction standards. They don't change with the adoption of this ordinance. But the consideration for both public and private projects is what is the potential risk of flooding, and what should be done otherwise. The only particular case that potentially would affect city-owned property is if the city were to pursue residential uses in some of these areas, they would also be subject to the same standard. So in particular, not that I think it's a good idea, but if someone wanted to propose the use of city property for residential use in a VE zone, this ordinance would prohibit that and would not be able to be pursued without a variance. So that's a summary of most of the questions I believe that I received. There was one other specific one, and I also am being cognizant of the questions and raised by Councilor O'Neill and also some members of the public about trying to make it clear what some of the particular standards apply to, and that they're applying to residential use and not other uses. So the last presentation that I gave, I had a couple of amendments to the use regulations in the proposed section 5.5.7. Some of them were courtesy of a revision proposed by Deb Eliason, who I think I see is in the audience. It's very, very small on my screen, to just clarify what we again meant about lot coverage and how these standards would be applied. So those that are after the in the second paragraph and the third paragraph on the slide are things that you've already seen and I presented at the last meeting. But there was that also a question raised of, we have certain definitions in our zoning ordinance. We don't have one in particular for residential construction or residential use per se. So again, these standards are being proposed for single family, two family, and multifamily, as those are the residential uses allowed that are often coincident with these flood zones. So it's been proposed to add a definition in advance of these standards specific for section 557 that would read, for the purposes of this section 557, residential dwelling, structure or construction shall mean an accessory dwelling unit, single family detached dwelling, a two-family dwelling, or a multifamily dwelling, or multifamily or apartment dwelling, except these standards shall not apply to mixed uses. And the reason why I do that call out is we have specific definitions for those uses in the zoning ordinance. So I wanted them to basically agree, so that we're making it very clear that when we're talking about, again, the standards that are being proposed for the VE zones and the AE zones, that it's those uses, those residential uses that they apply to. If you're in a residential district, for the most part, commercial and industrial uses are not permitted, but there may be mixed uses. There may be mixed uses that exist now. So again, for all other uses throughout the permitting process that's been identified in those other sections of the ordinance, flood risk will be a consideration in permitting, but there won't be a new standard that will be applied to commercial, mixed use, or industrial uses. So I've reviewed this with general counsel. I think it clarifies that particular concern that, again, these will only apply to residential use and specifically those that are called out. And I think, again, just if the committee is ready to move this forward to the full city council, I have a draft that is reflective with today's date with these revisions in it. And the only change to what Councilor Grow had read earlier in the evening in terms of the different sections of the ordinances, you could suggest that it's the draft section 5.5 bearing today's date. And that's all I have.
All right. Questions? Yep.
So if I'm correctly understanding this, the sections on the 8, the high velocity zones are very strict in terms of the rules, correct?
Yeah.
But the zoning for the AE zones can, the residential owner could bring in, could apply for different variances depending on the issues that they're dealing with. Is that correct?
So as these are dimensional standards, there's always the ability of someone to apply for a variance from a dimensional standard. I think the intent, particularly in the AE zones, is to start to have folks recognize that siting is very much a concern in these areas as well. They don't have the same risk associated with them as a VE zone. But over time, you know, what the intended outcome would be as structures are added onto or raised and rebuilt, that they would be outside of the existing floodplain.
So after we answer the questions, I would like Greg to give us a couple of examples of the AE zone 10% floodplains, how that works a little bit more in detail, if you would do that.
Sure.
Yeah, I've read this
Okay.
over a million times, and it's not sinking in completely.
All right. Any other questions?
No, that's
No?
it.
Tracy,
Thank you.
have questions?
Yeah, the 557 regulations, mixed use is exempt from those regulations, is that right?
So made it clear that in those instances, we're really talking about residential use. And for the most part, in the residential districts, there is an allowance of commercial or mixed use. So
There
there
is or
aren't,
isn't?
there is not.
Okay,
So, but in the case that there was a mixed use or a proposed mixed use, that would still have these standards of the consideration for the impact of flooding be applied to them, but there wouldn't be a strict standard in terms of the percentage of a lot, for instance, that could be altered, or in the case of the VE zone, somebody could propose it, but again, we don't have too many areas of the coastline in the VE zone that are not residentially zoned. Most of the coastline is residentially zoned. The Inner Harbor doesn't carry a V zone designation associated with it, so it kind of, I think it covers the bases in terms of making it clear what types of uses would potentially be proposed in these areas and how they should be regulated.
Okay, I'm sorry, what did you say about the Inner Harbor? Doesn't,
So the Inner Harbor doesn't have a V zone associated with it. It's mostly A zones that are associated with the land side of the harbor. Again, none of these standards that are being proposed would really apply unless there was a residential use, an existing residential use in the Marine Industrial District, in which case it's a non-conforming use and there's other avenues of how that permitting would potentially have to be reviewed.
right, so I'm thinking of the Inner Harbor, Commercial Street. Because in the Lowlands regulations, the Inner Harbor and Commercial Street or the Inner Harbor was exempt from those regulations, right?
Yeah, so the age of that
Yes,
the age of that ordinance was kind of, I believe it was back from probably 70s, 80s vintage. With this ordinance that is required, there is no ability to exempt any part of the floodplain from the ordinance. It has to identify the entire floodplain. And frankly, the standards that we're talking about in the section 557 are really above and beyond. If you took that out, you would get closer to what's simply required by the FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program for each community that wants to participate in the flood insurance program to adopt. So there's not a lot of wiggle room other than in that particular section 557, which is voluntary and proactive for Gloucester to consider regulating residential use in this way.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's
No, you're good. All
Thank
right,
you.
I will come on. I have a clarification question on what she just asked about. While 5.5.7 wouldn't apply to commercial and industrial uses on the harbor, section 1.8.3 for special council permits would the provision of having what do we call it, a I don't have it in front of me. Wait a second. 1.8.3 vulnerability to flooding and flood damage taking into consideration projections for sea level rise would still be a consideration that they would have to satisfy.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
so that's some level of interaction with that.
Yes.
concern. Flooding. Okay. I think I'm pretty good with my questions. This isn't a public hearing. I will
Can we
committee.
go back to my
Oh,
question?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Greg, did you understand my question? Just.
Yeah, I had a couple of
Like it-
slides from the last presentation that I can put
Yeah,
back
yeah,
up.
Just, you kind of need a PhD to figure this out, but it is important.
I don't think it's that level, but so these are the couple of examples. These are the couple examples that I provided at the last meeting.
Do tell us.
That again, because I think this clarifies one of the questions also that whoops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Let me get there. Sorry about that. So again, what we're talking about with these percentages or the 10% is only the area that's on this slide depicted in gray. So this is a scenario of a 10,000 square foot lot in maybe an R10 district bordering on the Annisquam River. And there's a certain amount of floodplain on the lot. So this is, again, land that potentially could be impacted by the 1% chance flood. And we have this fictitious footprint of a house that's 1,000 square feet. And the way the ordinance reads, it says that you can not result in altering more than 10% of the floodplain area on the lot. So that would be 300 square feet. So in this case, if this structure already alters that, They would have the ability to expand anywhere in the green on the lot, but they would not be able to, develop laterally within that area. If they were going to raise the structure, they would probably want to start further back to begin with to eliminate the need for having a flood insurance policy. So that's one scenario. The other scenario that I offered was, again, the same size structure. It is a little bit further back on the lot. It encumbers about 100 square feet of the AE zone. In this instance, someone could alter potentially up to 200 square feet of the lot. It's difficult without, getting into exactly what somebody is doing with a structure. But there would be the ability, for instance, to have a lateral expansion of maybe a deck on the side that would enter into that AE zone. But there's also points where, depending upon the amount of investment in a property, they will have to comply with the floodplain construction standards and elevate the property. And again, when somebody starts getting into those decisions, they might more likely start to move landward to remove themselves from the floodplain altogether. So again, it's being used as a tool to encourage people. It does have an absolute limitation on it. And as you mentioned earlier, if someone really had some extreme case of demonstrating why they would want to alter more than that, they'd have to pursue the route of a variance. But otherwise, again, it's a proactive way to start getting people to either site new construction outside of the floodplain or redevelopment outside of the floodplain.
Can I expand on that question just a little bit? Let's put that house footprint entirely in the AE zone. What happens then?
So then they become a situation where the footprint is the footprint. They cannot have any further expansion. If there is a structure that's entirely within the AE zone and they're going to, again, substantially redevelop, they have that footprint, but they would not be able to expand at all. They could certainly site outside of the floodplain if they have the room on the lot, and they would just have to comply with the lot coverage standards for that district.
Thank you.
Would they be able to build up?
So when you say build up, it gets to a point again where if they're investing more, there's a definition in the ordinance about substantial improvement. And at some point, the FEMA flood code says, if you're going to invest into a property that's more than 50% of its value, you should comply, in which case they may have to alter the foundation for that property. And again, that's where, people will have to make decisions about whether it's worthwhile to make that type of investment to meet floodplain construction standards or site the structure further out of floodplain on a property.
All right, thank you.
Okay. We are not having a public hearing here, and I'm a little loath to open up too much, but we have one person who's got a hand up. We're gonna hold this, okay,
I don't think it's right.
Okay.
And everybody else,
that's fair.
unless they have a question,
That's what they're having.
if it's only a question, I would, it's your call.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just a question,
But
I
if it
think
becomes deliberation, it's not
we're
fair.
not going to.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna, you could allow Mr. Pavazza to speak, but Joel, questions only, and
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the record, Joel Pavazza, Seaside Building Solutions, 123 Main Street here in Gloucester. The only question I have, and I believe the current language of the ordinance says that if a project has not begun construction as of the date of this ordinance amendment, it is then subject to this. And I would just ask that this subcommittee or the Greater City Council consider the fact that there are many properties impacted or to be impacted by this that have, for example, already received relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals, but are in the con process, et cetera, et cetera. They have a building permit application in, but it has not yet been approved. And I would ask you to consider amending that language that it triggers for those who have not taken a substantial first step toward construction, or possibly just pushing the date out a number of months, saying to give people who are in the process and have already spent tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to think about either getting it done or redesigning so that people aren't at the finish line and then kind of trip. So I just asked
And
that.
there's a
you consider
question
that.
mark there at the end, right?
Yeah.
Yes, would you consider that? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I spoke with Mr. Cadavatore about this earlier, and the process, I believe, in general, is that once we're at the point where we are at the public hearing phase, the zoning is effectively in place. Is that correct, Greg?
So at the first notice, that is typically where if a use hasn't been fully through a permitting process, they would need to comply with an ordinance if it is passed. So, the idea of introducing some sort of clause is the discretion of the council. It's a difficult one. What does it mean? Well, I don't want to get into deliberation, but if that question is going to be raised, I would also suggest that we also have general counsel at the public hearing. Again, there's been public discussion about this for a while. It was initiated by the planning board back in December with subcommittee meetings and meetings over the last year. So I understand it's a difficult thing when somebody's midstream, and that's what happens when regulations are changed.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? No? All right, thank you, Greg. I'm gonna have you hang in here with us for a little bit longer. I know it's long, but since we have not yet actually read through publicly the ordinance, I'm going to suggest that when we make the motion, that we actually read the ordinance, especially the changes in the areas of the existing ordinance that we go through. Is that?
May I suggest that we could screen share it
Yeah,
so the public can visualize it as we read it?
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Do you have the current copy of the plans to change the 5.5.7?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. It's a lot, I know, and I apologize to those of you who are waiting here. But it's a messy business. We're gonna read through very quickly 5.5. All right, so can we have the language that you had up before on the?
You're going to read the entire draft of the ordinance?
Do you think we should not?
It's been publicly available. I don't know that you want to. I don't know if you want to do that kind of bedtime
Grab a
story.
cup of coffee.
But-
You just saved your bacon on that one.
Absolutely, at least.
It's only 5 or 6 pages long. No,
Oh,
it's not
yeah, and
7 or
there's
8
lots of
pages long.
acronyms and there's, yeah.
Let's stick with the draft. We'll identify the draft and the changes and acknowledge that it is available on the website for people to view. So we'll have, we need the language of the new motion that you projected.
I will send that to Sherry right now.
Okay, thanks. You can just put it on the screen. We can read it from there.
So why don't you make the motion?
Well, I'm gonna read the damn thing. That's no. Okay, so go ahead, Greg, if you wanna show us the amended motion that you had put today's date in, that'd be awesome. All right. Yeah, I definitely suggest Margarita for Greg. All right, I move that the city council amend the Gloucester zoning ordinance by deleting the current section 5.5 lowlands and replacing it with a new section 5.5 floodplain overlay district as drafted in the attached document titled draft section 5.5 floodplain overlay district dated February 8th, 2023, and referenced maps, future flood risk district map, depth 5, 2022. I believe that's May 1st, 2022. And future flood risk district map probability 5/1/2022, and accompanying amendments outlined in the attached document titled floodplain zoning amendment sections 1.5, 1.8, 5.8, 5.9, 5.15, December 7th, 2022, to add submission of requirements to all special permit applications, site plan reviews, open space residential development, and cluster developments and require applications to address vulnerability to current and future flooding as reviewed criteria for approval. And I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? We understand what we're changing and all the places we are changing them. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Basically, the sections that aren't 5.5 are just inclusions of language that includes the floodplain zone as a condition of consideration in the permitting process. So without any further ado, yeah, you wanna-
So I just wanted to comment that I appreciate the planning board being proactive in community development on this, and particularly as we've witnessed the rising tides in the past storms, it just seems like this is the right thing to be doing. And, you know, we know that the state is heading in this direction and it's given us some parameters, but the fact that we're moving along at a good pace for a community that's surrounded by water, I'm proud of us, so I will be supporting this.
Tracy?
I'll be supporting this, but I am concerned for the businesses, that's all.
Okay. With nothing else, I agree with the proaction is something we ought to be doing, frankly, more often, and with lots of other issues facing the city. So it's good to see a start here. Without any other comment? No? All in favor? Aye. Aye. We don't have to do a roll call for. Yeah.
You're all here.
Fantastic. Passes 3-0. Greg, thank you very much.
Public
Appreciate
hearing.
all your, the public hearing will be
February 14th.
February
Tuesday.
14th. It is going to be an awesome Valentine's Day.
Certainly.
Goodness
We have
gracious.
a little conversation parts that we can say for Valentine's
Yeah.
Day.
Fantastic. Anybody who had plans on February 14th, cancel them now. The place to be is at the city council. All right, thank you. Greg, do we need you for the hotel?
I don't think so. I'll see
Okay.
you next week.
Have a good night. All right.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
All right, finally, I've lost my. Sorry, thank you for showing up. You guys want to take a half an hour break? For a second?
We should have just read the packet.
All right, the next item on the agenda is special council permit 2023-001. Number 1, Main Street, number 108, map 7, lot 51. Gloucester zoning ordinance sections 1.10 miscellaneous special permits, 3.1.6b building heights in excess of 35 feet, and 3.2.6 footnote A dimensional requirements for hotels, motels, and motor inns and their accessory uses other than signs, minimum lot area per 2 guest unit square footage, and to convert the second and third floors to a hotel with approximately 12 rooms and a lobby. This is continued from January 18th. And it is also, we had a site visit last week where we viewed what we could of the exterior of the building and discussed the exterior, or asked questions about the exterior changes. We had a couple of questions, not too many, but we've asked Deb Eliason to address those questions, and then we can get on with the final phase of this before we go to city council.
Council, may I just speak for a
You
second?
may.
So
Please.
I just want to declare that Kate Seidman is my sister-in-law. And although she's not the applicant in this, I don't have any financial interest or gain because of that. She's not a blood relative, but she is my sister-in-law. So I just wanted to put that on the record that I don't believe that I have any type of a conflict.
Very good. Excellent. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Deborah Ellison, Ellison Law Office, 63 Middle Street, Gloucester. With me tonight is the applicant, Eric Sullivan. And what I'd like to do is just for the record, go through the questions that were asked at the site visit. So we did look at the outside of the building and looked to the fact that the building is right along the lot line. It's right adjacent to adjacent buildings so that there's no space between them, and that the height is consistent with the heights of other buildings in that area, and all of it is existing. There was a question asking to explain the relief requested for lot area and open space per 2 guest units. 1,250 square feet of open space is required per 2 guest units. We are requesting a special permit allowing 0 square feet of open space because the current building covers the entire lot. So it's impossible to comply with the ordinance without tearing the building down, which I don't believe anyone would like to see happen. There is also a requirement that 2,500 square feet of lot area be required for 2 guest units. At the site visit, I stated that again, 0 square feet was requested, but that was incorrect. We're requesting that the special permit allow 402 square feet of lot area per 2 guest units. The current lot area is 2,416 square feet. And so per 6 units, it comes out to 402 square feet of lot area that we will have. There was also a question regarding egress and fire safety. And it is the intent to remove the exterior fire escapes because there will be a second means of egress that will be added to the right side of the building adjacent to the Passports Restaurant on Main Street. And although parking is expressly not required by ordinance for this building, there were questions asked about parking and loading and unloading. The guests will be informed that there is no parking. They will be told where it is permissible to park. They will also be told to park that they're not allowed to park and leave their car while they bring their baggage up to their rooms. And just like any other businesses in downtown, they'll either find a place to park and then walk and drop off, or drop off one person with luggage and have the second person park the car. Many people will take the train, arrive by cab, and management will monitor the parking situation and ensure that the rules are enforced. It's in the applicant's best interest to make sure his guests are not ticketed or towed. And they have a 5-star rating among their hotels in other downtown locations, and they want to keep it that way. So I would like to emphasize again that parking is not required, and also the use is allowed. So any issues associated with the use are really not relevant to what's before the council. I'm happy to answer any other questions that councilors may have.
Ward 2 council, do you have any specific questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I understand parking's not required. Where's it going with that? I'm sorry. Has this gone through, this been approved by the fire department and the police department?
There is no requirement that that be done. Perhaps when they get the building permit or occupancy permit, those issues may be looked at.
Okay. All right, that was my question.
Okay. Val, do you have any further questions on this?
No, I thought the site visit was helpful to look at the structure on the outside. And I really have no questions.
All right, I don't have any questions. As everything questions has been asked. So we will put forward a motion to move this to the city council for public hearing. We'll need to have the relief requested amended to reflect the new 402 feet per 2 units, so that that's accurately placed in there. I think that's it. Yeah. Anything else we got?
Where would we put that in the motion?
Well, it's not in the motion now, and I think it's just in the language of the relief that's being sought.
We just asked for a reduction in the open space and lot area that was acquired. We didn't ask for a specific.
Didn't specify because there is none. I think that's what the.
So it's not required.
No, I mean, we could put it at 0. I mean,
Okay.
they're only asking for relief down to 402 feet. But
Okay.
we could just, it doesn't change your situation, except that you could put in 30 units at that point if you wanted to. Yeah, no, I know, I understand that, but I mean, we would define it that we would permanently define it as 12 or more units. I mean, 12 or fewer units. But it's something we could add at the city council level too.
Okay.
Yeah, so with that, I'll make the motion to recommend the city council grant to Eric Sullivan a special permit, SCP 2023-001 for the property located at Main Street number 108. And for people watching at home, that's the Passports building. I don't think I was making sure it was clear. Assessors map 7, lot 51 in the central business district pursuant to Gloucester zoning ordinance sections 1.10.1A1 and 3.1.6B. Building heights in excess of 35 feet for a building height of 41 feet, 10 inches and section 1.10.1A footnote 2, section 2, section 3.2.6 footnote A. God, I love this. Dimensional requirements for hotels and motels and motor inns and their accessory uses other than signs for reduction in the required lot area and open space. This permit is made on the basis of plans and elevations dated January 4th, 2022, entitled Floor Plans and Building Elevations, and proposed floor plans and elevations submitted to the city clerk on January 4th, 2023. Subject to new information and or debate that results from the public hearing, the special permit is deemed to be in harmony with the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance, and I so move.
Second.
Second, okay. On the motion?
So I just want to review some of the components of 1.8.3.
Right, right.
The applicant intends to convert the second and third floors of the building at 108 Main Street to a hotel with approximately 12 rooms. Replacing the underutilized second and third floors with a hotel use will create a more useful space in keeping with the downtown area and bring a surge to the local economy with guests frequenting shops, restaurants, and other downtown businesses. It will also provide additional tax revenue to the city and provide a greater need for consumer goods and services in the downtown area, with the building once again being fully utilized. And those are components of social, economic, and community needs that are served by the project. Also, in terms of traffic flow, pursuant to the Gloucester zoning ordinance 4.1.1D, no parking is required under the ordinance for this building, as Attorney Ellison said. Furthermore, it is located within less than 400 feet from the municipal parking lot near the Gloucester House on Roger Street, and a little more than 600 feet from the municipal lot at City Hall. Number 3, utilities and other public services. Utilities will be updated as necessary and will be adequate to meet the needs of the hotel and restaurant. Obviously, for those that are listening, the restaurant will remain on the first floor. Neighborhood character and social structure. The project is appropriate for this neighborhood. It is consistent with the neighborhood character and social structure. The addition of a small 12-room hotel will add to the vibrancy of the local economy and guests frequenting the shops, restaurants, and other downtown businesses. That's part of neighborhood character and social structure. Qualities of the natural environment will not be impacted, as a footprint of the existing building will remain unchanged. Furthermore, the height and the lot coverage, which are pre-existing, will not change. The building is not located in an environmentally sensitive area. And then finally, the potential fiscal impact. The improvement and conversion of this long underutilized building will increase its value and add tax income to the city. So I will be supporting this, and I felt it was important to review section
Yeah, no,
1.8.3.
I was expecting. So
Thank you.
that's good, yeah. Great. Any other discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I have reservations. I live downtown, so I know those streets, what's traveled, when it's traveled, how it's traveled, where people park on the sidewalk, etc. And I know you seem like a really nice guy, and you know, that you're really nice. I'm concerned that 12 rooms, it's going to be at least 12 cars, because oftentimes people have guests. And I understand they can park in the municipal parking lots. However, now they don't even have to go and feed the meter. They can just do it on an app. So they can park the car and never ever leave it. So we're gonna have 12 cars parked in the municipal parking lot, which is full all the time anyway. So where are those people gonna park? So Ward 2 is all about parking, and it's hard for other people to understand. It really is. I am gonna vote no on this, but maybe you can change my mind. I don't know. I think it's a good idea. I just foresee people unloading their luggage on the right-hand side and people picking up their dogs on the other side of the street, and the fire engines trying to get down, and the YMCA project. It's just a very congested neighborhood. So And the people I've spoken to who live in my neighborhood or my ward, they are not in favor of it. So I have to respect what they've told me. So I'll probably be the minority, so, but I just can't support it. I just can't at this time.
Yep. All right, well, I am going to support it. I think it's going to be a great addition to downtown. I think it's going to be an economic driver. It's something we need downtown. Having lived in San Francisco for over 15 years or so, I know parking problems and how difficult they can be to surmount. But if we do nothing because of potential parking problems, we're going to do nothing. I mean, I don't think that the 12 additional cars are going to be that impactful to the overall downtown environment. But I think that the benefits of the hotel are going to be far outweigh that for the general economy and for generally just raising up the downtown area. So I am going to support this. That's it. Go ahead.
May I speak again on the motion?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Thank you. I also want to say that I took a great note of the amount of abutters and businesses, local businesses that are supporting this. And I think that's important because they're all competing for parking. And that meant a lot. I looked at, believe it or not, my battery just pooped out on me. So I can't count the amount of letters, but there was a significant amount of letters by many of its abutting businesses. And I think that that was impressive. So thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
2-1, O'Neill dissent. Thank you. And this will be up for February 14th. It's going to be Valentine's Day massacre, I'm telling you.
And
So
then.
that'll be public hearing
It
too.
is
That's the
also-
public
I'm gonna
hearing.
give you guys one of these so you
We-
can
we-
share it back.
We might need to bring a chocolate plate in for the evening. All right, very good. Let me find my paperwork here that I've messed up. We have one last issue to resolve, and that is the withdrawal. We have City Council Order 2022-037 Worthley, amend GCO Section 5.22, Commercial Land-Based Wind Energy Conversion Facilities, Section 5.22.14, monitoring and maintenance, and that is listed to be withdrawn, which we have to do. Thank you very much. With the vote, I believe. Thanks for coming. So we'll take a motion to withdraw.
I think you can do it without objection, but if you
We
want to vote it.
have to vote it though, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
have to vote it. So I'll move that we withdraw that, with that city council order.
Second.
Second on the motion, any discussion?
Without prejudice.
Without prejudice. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously withdrawn. That means it can come back. With that, we are done, I believe.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. All in
Second.
favor? Aye. Let's
Aye.
go.
No more
Second,
roll
I'll
call
move. There we
vote.
go.
Thank you.
Actually, the lack of roll call votes throwing me a little bit.
Yeah, right.